We're catching up with Nate Fox from Sucker Punch here, just a couple of weeks removed from the release of Infamous Second Son, your maiden effort on PS4. It's got to be exciting times.
It's great, man. I mean, to be done with the game and finally get a chance to share it with people like yourself, it's a good feeling.
All right, so we got to start at the end of Infamous 2 because I think that's something that all the players who experience that have with them when they move into Second Son. What was it like for a studio to sort of put an ending to that the way that you did with Cole and Infamous 2?
Well, at the end of Infamous 2, we gave players a choice if they wanted to heroically sacrifice Cole or keep him alive, and the vast majority of players chose to sacrifice him, to kill him. So we honored that choice, and we let Cole die, and we made an all-new hero with all-new powers with a new origin story in Infamous Second Son, which is actually pretty great because it means that people who aren't familiar with the franchise can jump right in and they don't need to know any backstory.
So, but I mean, I gotta ask this because you had to have had a preference, like in your mind. When players were doing this, you had to have had a vision and what you wanted to do, and also a vision for what if it had gone the other way and plan B, so to speak.
I will be honest, I actually wrote the evil ending of Infamous 2 to be the one that would be the start of the third game. But when I saw what players were doing, we wanted to honor it, you know, because the franchise is about choice and consequence. So while I was a little disappointed at what players were choosing, I think it worked out in the end to be very, very good.
It's one of those rare occasions, perhaps, when the game director hasn't have a final say.
Oh man, no, the game director doesn't have final say. I mean, what we do is we try and make the game to be what players kind of love, right? So we spend a lot of time putting our games in front of playtesters, and when we see everyone in playtest doing this one thing, we say, well, dude, we should do more of that. I mean, we're out to make a great experience, not just kind of make what we think is right, but what we see people loving. And we do that in all our games. Second Son's no exception.
So that takes us to Delsin Rowe, who's the new hero, the new guy that we're getting to know a little bit. And what kind of things did you sort of, because when you created Cole, you didn't, he was sort of an all new hero. What kind of ideas did you sort of have from that you take from that, and what kind of things do you want to stay away with when you created someone new?
Well, Delsin's very much kind of a composite of what I saw players doing when I'd watch playtests of Infamous 1 and 2. These people were anarchists, man. I mean, they would get inside of the open world and they would just break stuff and they'd run around causing mayhem. But then they would always heal civilians, or they would try and be conscious of what they were doing. So in thinking about Delsin, he's the personification of freedom. I mean, he's that open world mayhem guy that is exactly what you do as a player. And because he's so similar to what I saw as sort of like the base open world player, there's no distance between you and him. You know, you kind of can identify with the story because it's so similar to what people do in these games.
Do you want to make it easier, perhaps, for players to make an evil choice if they, because sometimes you feel like this is the proper choice to play a game. Has that entered your mind?
Well, I think it's always easy to make the bad choice, the selfish choice, right? And that's often we portray it as such. You know, if you.
I think gamers, they seek a challenge in that. They want to be I think a lot of these games where you can pick good and bad, players usually try and be on the good side, at least when there's like a conscious choice to be made.
If they're doing that, it's their choice. I mean, we're not forcing them to do that at all. In fact, in a lot of ways, the evil choice is often more fun, right? Because you get to just not worry about the consequences as much. I mean, ultimately, they do bite you in the butt if you are an evil character. I mean, people will come to loathe you for your actions, but it's easier to be a bad person, right? I can tell you're a good guy. I'm sure you have to work hard at not speeding or, breaking windows when you're pissed off.
Well, I do tend to be a bit of a party mouth when I play online, but that's pretty much it.
I don't believe you.
All right. So we talked about the good and evil, the sort of that part of it. Would you say that the game is pretty much a completely different experience if you play it through playing as a good character or an evil character, or how much do you sort of have in common through the experience?
I don't think you've really played the game until you played it through twice. I mean, uh, there are different missions if you're good or you're bad. There are different powers that the hero gets. The story changes, not just for Delsin, but for characters he meets along the way. He influences how they grow and develop and really fundamentally alters them.
So, what do you think it is about this sort of ordinary person with superpowers? It's such a popular subject in all kinds of fiction and well, what do you think about it that it is that's so appealing to humans who don't have superpowers?
I mean, I think we all just want to be more potent as people, right? I mean, inside of you, don't you think, oh, there's greatness, just it hasn't had a chance to explode onto the world. I mean, it's this longing to be more. So I think superheroes are just a great expression of that because it's such a clean statement. Oh, I'm a normal guy. Oh, no, now I've got these crazy abilities. It's very external. It's visual versus, kind of transcendence through something internal, which is frankly harder to portray in a video game.
But I guess there's got to be a challenge in sort of bringing a fresh angle to it as well. Try and stay away from perhaps things that has been covered a lot because of these problems of sort of ordinary people and these outcasts. It's very much X-Men in my mind. It has a lot of this as well, a lot of these themes. How do you sort of keep it fresh?
Well, we really try and choose powers that you haven't seen before. So we've shown that Delsin has the ability to harness smoke and neon, and he's actually got the best superpower of them all, which is if he can lay hands on somebody with superpowers, he drains their abilities. There are other powers which we haven't shown yet because we want to give players the fun of exploring them and discovering them for themselves. But they aren't things you've seen in other mediums, just for identity, right? We want to give you a fresh experience.
Feels very much like classes in a way. At least from what I experienced, that the smoke is one class and the neon is another class. Yeah. Is that how you approached it from a design point of view?
We absolutely said, okay, what's the kind of role you would play with smoke? What's the kind of role you would play with neon? So smoke, you get in close and you can kind of mix it up for combat in close quarters. And neon, you're more of shooting people at a distance, running away. It is class, like you say. But we give the player the choice to switch powers when they want. And it's an open world game, so that kind of freedom says, if you're having problems with an encounter using smoke, why don't you switch to neon? And if you're really proficient with one, you can just stay in it. You want the powers to be different, right? So having that kind of specified role is important.
And you don't approach it like a puzzle that you need one certain power to approach one problem, or is it completely open, or is that perhaps in some cases that you want to go in there and say you should use this specific one?
It's very rare that we require you to use a particular power. We're trying to give the player choice, and not just the choice to be a hero or villain, but what kind of powers you want to use as well.
So you haven't really shown the sort of the powers that you can absorb that much from other superpowered enhanced people. What can we expect from those? Will those be like payoffs for the player that this is a rare occasion where you can actually use this, or how will that work?
Well, throughout Delsin's adventure, he meets other people with superhuman powers, and he can take them onto himself. It works like we've shown in videos so far. I mean, you get a basic set of powers like neon, and then through choices you make or actions you do in the world, they develop and grow. You can get upgrades to them. They change based on if you're a good person and being very high-minded towards the population or a total jerk, morphing into the kind of hero or villain you are.
One other hero of the game, and something that is completely different from the previous games, is the fact that you're setting it in Seattle, real-world city, and it's under siege, and it's sort of local territory for you guys as well. what kind of thoughts went into sort of going with that choice and the themes that are, it's a city on the siege?
Yeah. Well, like you said, our studio is in Seattle, and we chose the city because we thought we could do a great job making this totally believable. And with the next-gen hardware, the fidelity of everything from reflective puddles to dynamic weather is something you have to take into account. And so we wanted to make this kind of as perfect as possible foundation of reality, so that when you got these superhuman powers, you believed in them as well. Now, the theme of our game is it's kind of the contrast between people's desire for freedom and society's thirst for security. There are cameras on every street corner, right? And it's kind of creepy, right? You're always being watched by the government. But we have those to protect ourselves from threats. And the game explores where's the line between these two things. Delsin is the personification of freedom. He wants to have everybody have the choice to not be watched or scrutinized by the government. And the bad guys are saying, no, that's not correct. Everyone should know their place, and we're going to enforce that.
It's that paradox between protecting freedom by sort of limiting freedom, that sort of thing.
That's certainly the attitude of our game's villains. And frankly, our game doesn't claim to know the answer, but we explore the topic because it's frankly relevant to the world we live in, right? I mean, those are the problems of right now. So the powers are awesome, right? I mean, reveling in your superpowers, that's the fun of the game, man. I mean, that's why you play it. But behind it all is this really, in my opinion, contemporary debate about how much security should we allow in our lives. Do you really want to have people tapping your cell phones?
So, of course, Seattle was in the news a few years back with the whole World Trade Organization thing. Is that sort of things that sort of influence you in this direction, seeing your city sort of under siege in that at that time?
So being involved in those riots in Seattle, actually being there and getting tear gas, changed my opinion a lot about what it means to be safe in a city. And also, I would see people inside of a cluster of the town where there were no police, and some folks would be kicking in windows and rioting, and that the everyday person would be giving out food or water to help wash your eyes out of the gas. It makes you think that society is really good and kind, but that it's a fragile thing. And so we kind of have a responsibility to reinvent it and trust in other people's kind of inherent goodness.
All right. Nice way to finish things off, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.